Getting uninvited to my cousin's lake house party kept me out of an investigation that's still ongoing. My cousin Dylan throws this massive 4th of July bash every year at his family's property upstate. Everyone goes. Extended family, friends, neighbors, random people who heard about it. It's become a tradition. I'd been going for 8 years straight. This year, I got uninvited exactly 4 days before the party. Not by Dylan, by his girlfriend Bethany. She sent a group text at 2 a.m., which should have been my first warning sign. Hey, so we're doing a more intimate gathering this year. Family only. Hope you understand. I didn't understand. I am family. But Dylan and I had gotten into this stupid argument 2 weeks earlier about him borrowing my truck and returning it on empty. Again. So I figured Bethany was just being petty on his behalf. Fine. Whatever. I made other plans. The next morning, my phone exploded. Texts, missed calls, voicemails. My uncle was the first to reach me. Have you seen the news? He asked, his voice shaking. About Dylan's party? I pulled up the local news site and my stomach dropped. Breaking. Multiple hospitalized after 4th of July gathering. Authorities investigating possible poisoning. 18 people were in the hospital, 6 in critical condition, and Dylan was missing. The news kept updating throughout the day. The police had sealed off the entire property. Hazmat teams were combing through everything. Initial reports suggested something in the food or drinks, but nobody could confirm. Some guests were reporting hallucinations, seizures, respiratory failure. One woman was in a medically induced coma. By evening, the FBI had gotten involved. That's when things got weird. They weren't just investigating what happened at the party. They were investigating everyone who'd been invited, but didn't show up, including me. 2 agents appeared at my door around 9 p.m. They wanted to know why I wasn't there, who had uninvited me, what I knew about Dylan's recent activities, whether I'd noticed anything unusual in the weeks leading up to the party. I showed them Bethany's text, expecting that to clear things up. Instead, they exchanged this look. Bethany Davis sent this, one agent asked, making a note. Can you forward this to us immediately? Turns out, Bethany had uninvited exactly 11 people, all of them related to Dylan somehow. All of them people he was close with. She'd used different excuses for each of us. Told my sister the party was canceled due to weather. Told my brother that Dylan had COVID and had to postpone. Told my aunt they'd accidentally double-booked the property. None of us had compared notes until after the news broke. Here's what makes my blood run cold. Everyone who actually showed up to the party? Not family. They were all people Dylan had never mentioned before. People who responded to some open invitation Bethany had posted on obscure social media groups. Strangers. The agents wouldn't tell me much, but they kept asking about Dylan's access to my truck. Whether I'd noticed if anything was missing from it, what kind of work I do. I'm a veterinary technician. I have access to controlled substances, sedatives, euthanasia medications, the kind of things that would never be missed in small quantities. When they finally left, they told me not to leave town, that they'd be in touch. My truck has been impounded for evidence processing. Dylan's still missing. Bethany's in custody but isn't talking. The hospitalized guests are starting to recover, but they can't remember anything after arriving at the property. And I keep thinking about that text Bethany sent. The timing, the fact that she saved us, or set us up. The FBI showed up again yesterday, this time with a warrant for my phone records, my work logs, and samples from my apartment. They're building a case, but I don't know against who. All I know is that getting uninvited might have saved my life, or made me look guilty of something I didn't do. The day after the FBI searched my apartment, I got a call from my boss at the veterinary clinic. Dr. Henderson sounded stressed, which was unusual for him. He's one of those perpetually calm types who could handle a dog with arterial bleeding while ordering lunch. We need to talk, he said. Federal agents were here this morning going through our controlled substance logs. I drove to the clinic immediately. Dr. Henderson was sitting in his office with our practice manager, both looking at spreadsheets. They asked specifically about you, he said, sliding the papers across the desk. About your access to our medications. Whether you've ever taken anything home. The logs showed every time I'd handled controlled substances over the past 2 years. Every euthanasia procedure, every sedation, every prescription pickup. The agents had highlighted 14 entries, small discrepancies, a milliliter here, half a dose there, the kind of rounding errors that happen in any busy practice. Those are normal variations, I said. You know how it is when an animal struggles during sedation or we have to adjust dosing. Doctor, Henderson nodded. That's what I told them, but they wanted copies of everything anyway, and they asked about your relationship with Dylan Foster. That's when I realized how bad this looked. Dylan had been coming to the clinic for months, bringing his girlfriend's cat in for various appointments, Bethany's cat. A Persian named Gatsby that had chronic kidney issues. I'd been the tech on most of those visits. How many times did Dylan come in? I asked. Dr. Henderson checked his computer. Looks like 8 appointments since February, all with you as the assigned technician. 8 opportunities for Dylan to wait in the lobby while I had access to the medication cabinet. 8 times he could have watched me enter the access code. 8 times he could have memorized my routine. I sat in the parking lot for 20 minutes after leaving Dr. Henderson's office, just staring at the steering wheel, trying to process what was happening. My hands were shaking. I kept replaying every interaction with Dylan over the past year, looking for signs I'd missed. When I finally drove home, there was a news van parked across the street. A reporter I didn't recognize was standing on the sidewalk with a cameraman. I pulled into my spot and kept my head down, but she was already approaching. Are you aware your cousin is missing? She called out. Do you know where Dylan Foster is? I didn't answer, just walked faster. Is it true you work with controlled substances? Did you provide Dylan with drugs? I slammed my apartment door behind me and immediately closed all the blinds. My phone started ringing. Unknown numbers. I didn't answer any of them. Then my mom called. "What's going on?" she asked. "Your aunt called me crying. She's saying Dylan's missing and the FBI is asking about you. They're investigating everyone who knows him. But why you specifically?" I told her about the clinic, the medications, Dylan's appointments. My mom was quiet for a long time. "Did you give him anything?" The question felt like a punch to the gut. "No, Mom, I didn't give him anything. I'm not accusing you. I'm just asking. You shouldn't have to ask." Another silence. Then, "Your father wants to know if you need a lawyer." "Probably. We'll call someone tomorrow. Don't talk to anyone else until then." After we hung up, I made the mistake of looking at social media. Someone had posted my name in a local community group, asking if anyone knew me. The comments were already filling with speculation, people claiming they'd always thought I was weird. Someone from high school saying I'd been obsessed with true crime shows. A neighbor I'd never spoken to saying I kept odd hours and always looked suspicious. It was surreal, watching strangers construct a narrative about who I was based on absolutely nothing. I drove home in a daze. My apartment felt different now, like the FBI's search had left fingerprints on everything. I started going through my own records, trying to remember every interaction with Dylan over the past year. That's when I found the texts. I deleted them back in May, after our argument about the truck. But my phone backs everything up automatically. There they were. Dozens of messages between me and Dylan from March through June. Casual stuff mostly, but 3 of them made my hands shake. March 18th. Dylan. "Hey man, random question. How do you keep track of all those medications at work?" March 22nd. Dylan. "Could someone theoretically take small amounts without anyone noticing?" April 2nd. Dylan. "If someone wanted to make people sick but not kill them, what would work?" I'd assumed he was writing a story. Dylan was always talking about the thriller novel he was working on. I'd answered his questions the way you'd help a buddy with research. Never thought twice about it. Until now. I called my lawyer immediately. Public defender I'd used for a speeding ticket 2 years ago, but it was 11 p.m., and I was panicking. She called back within 20 minutes. "Don't talk to anyone," she said. "Not the FBI, not your family, not your co-workers. I'll be at your place in an hour." Her name was Patricia Moreno, and she showed up with a briefcase and a grim expression. I showed her everything. The texts, the clinic logs, Bethany's uninvited message. She spent 40 minutes reading through it all, taking notes. "Here's where you are," she finally said. "You have motive, opportunity, and you provided information that could have facilitated this crime. The fact that you weren't at the party actually makes you look more guilty, not less. I was uninvited by the other suspect, who's claiming she doesn't know anything. Meanwhile, you have documented conversations about how to acquire medications and use them to make people sick." I felt like the walls were closing in. I thought he was writing a book. Did he ever show you this book? Mention it to anyone else? Have any evidence it exists? I thought back. He talked about it. But no, I never saw anything. Patricia closed her briefcase. "The FBI is building a case that you and Dylan planned this together. That Bethany either helped or was being manipulated. They think you provided the drugs, Dylan distributed them, and Bethany cleared out anyone who might identify you. That's insane. Why would I do that? They'll argue financial motive. How much are you making as a vet tech? $38,000 a year. Dylan's family has money. The lake house, the property. Maybe you wanted in. Maybe he promised you a cut. A cut of what?" Patricia shrugged. "That's the piece they're still figuring out. But here's what I know. 18 people got poisoned. 2 of them nearly died. This is federal. If they charge you, you're looking at 20 years minimum. Attempted murder, conspiracy, drug trafficking, and right now, all the evidence points to you." She left around 1 a.m. I didn't sleep. Just sat there thinking about how my entire life had shifted in 4 days. How answering a few texts about medications had somehow made me an accomplice to mass poisoning. The next morning, my sister called. "The family's talking," she said quietly. "About you and Dylan. People are saying you two were planning something." "Planning what?" "I don't know. But Aunt Caroline said Dylan told her you'd gotten him interested in medications, that you were teaching him about dosing and effects. He asked questions for a book he was writing." My sister was quiet for a moment. "Was he, though? Writing a book?" I realized I didn't have an answer. By noon, the local news had picked up the story. "Veterinary technician under investigation in mass poisoning." They used my employee photo from the clinic's website. I looked tired in it, slightly annoyed. The caption read, "Person of interest." My phone started ringing constantly. Reporters, mostly, but also people I hadn't spoken to in years. Old friends wanting to know if it was true. Acquaintances looking for gossip. My landlord called to inform me that other tenants had expressed concerns about my continued residence in the building. I stopped answering all of it. That afternoon, my brother showed up unannounced. He brought groceries, which was kind of him. We didn't talk about the case at first, just unpacked food, made small talk about his kids, pretended everything was normal. Then he sat down at my kitchen table and said, "Be honest with me. Did you have anything to do with this?" "No, but you gave Dylan information about medications." He said he was researching for a book. My brother rubbed his face. "Nobody can find any evidence he was writing a book. No files on his computer, no drafts, no notes. The FBI checked. Maybe he kept it private. Or maybe," my brother said slowly, "he was using you, getting you to incriminate yourself while planning this whole thing." I hadn't considered that angle, that Dylan might have been deliberately creating a trail that led to me. "Why would he do that?" I asked. "Because he needed a fall guy. Someone with access to drugs, someone with medical knowledge, someone the FBI would believe could pull this off. That's his own cousin. Yeah, my brother said, which makes it even more messed up. He left after an hour, but the conversation stayed with me. The idea that Dylan had weaponized our relationship, that every casual question had been a calculated move. Over the next week, more details emerged. The toxicology reports came back. The victims had been poisoned with a combination of ketamine, acepromazine, and xylazine. All three are veterinary sedatives. All three were in the clinic's inventory, and the amounts used matched almost exactly the discrepancies the FBI had highlighted in my logs. The math was too perfect to be coincidental. Dr. Henderson called again. "I'm putting you on administrative leave," he said. His voice was strained, apologetic. "It's not personal. But with the investigation ongoing and the media attention, I can't have you working with controlled substances right now. I understand. I want to believe you didn't do this, but I have to protect the practice. I wanted to be angry with him, but I couldn't." He was right. From his perspective, I was a liability, a ticking time bomb that could destroy everything he'd built. The administrative leave meant no income. I had maybe 2 months of savings before rent became a problem. I started looking at job postings for anything that didn't require a clean background. Gas stations, retail, fast food, places that might not Google my name during the hiring process. Then Bethany's lawyer made a statement. She claimed Bethany had been coerced by Dylan, that he'd threatened her family if she didn't help, that she'd sent those uninvited texts because Dylan told her to keep his family away. She was cooperating fully with authorities and had provided information about Dylan's accomplice, me. According to Bethany, Dylan had been bragging for months about having a friend who could get any drug he wanted, someone who worked with animals and knew how to avoid detection, someone who owed him favors and would do anything he asked. It was a complete fabrication, but it fit the evidence perfectly. The news cycle exploded. Every local station ran with the story. Girlfriend reveals plot details. Accomplice identified. Vet tech provided deadly drugs. My photo was everywhere, paired with shots of the lake house and ambulances. They interviewed the victims' families, who understandably wanted someone to blame. I became that someone. Patricia called with an update. "They found your fingerprints at the lake house, in the kitchen, on several glasses and on the refrigerator handle. I've been to Dylan's lake house dozens of times over the years. Of course, my fingerprints are there. They're arguing these prints are recent, from the week before the party. They found them on a bottle of juice that matches what was served to victims." I tried to remember. Had I been there recently? Dylan had borrowed my truck in mid-June, said he needed to move some furniture to the lake house. I'd ridden along to help. We'd grabbed drinks from the fridge while taking a break. "That's when I left the prints," I told Patricia. "We were moving furniture." "Oh, can anyone corroborate that?" "Just Dylan," Patricia sighed. "Who's currently missing and being treated as either a co-conspirator or another victim. That doesn't help you." I spent the next few days essentially under house arrest. Not legally, but practically. Reporters camped outside my building. Neighbors avoided me in the hallways. Someone spray-painted poisoner on my car overnight. The property manager made me park in a different spot, away from other vehicles because residents were complaining. My mom came by with food one evening. She looked older somehow, worn down by worry. "Your aunt is devastated," she said. "She doesn't know what to believe anymore." "Does she think I did it?" Mom hesitated. "She thinks Dylan might have gotten you involved without you realizing it, that maybe you helped him accidentally. There's no accidentally providing poison for mass murder. I know, but people are trying to make sense of this, and you did answer those questions for him. About a book he was supposedly writing, that nobody can find any trace of." I looked at my mom. "Do you think I did it?" She took a long time to answer. "No, but I think you trusted someone you shouldn't have, and now you're paying for it." The FBI agent, Caldwell, requested another interview. Patricia advised against it, but I was desperate to explain myself. We met at her office downtown with Patricia present. Caldwell laid out their case methodically. The texts, the clinic visits, the medication discrepancies, the fingerprints, the timing of my truck loan to Dylan, even my bank deposits, which they'd traced and found suspicious. "We know you helped him," she said. "What we're trying to understand is why. Was it money? Did he threaten you? Were you coerced?" I didn't help him with anything. "Then explain these conversations." And she pushed printouts of the texts across the table. "Explain why you taught him about controlled substances, about dosing, about making people sick without killing them. He said he was writing a thriller novel. Show me this novel." "I never saw it. He just talked about it." Caldwell leaned back. "Here's what I think happened. Dylan approached you months ago with a plan. Maybe he offered you money. Maybe he threatened to expose something. Either way, you provided the drugs. You walked him through the process. And when he executed the plan, you made sure you weren't there so you'd have deniability. That's not what happened. Then what did happen?" I didn't have a good answer, because the truth sounded absurd. My cousin asked me random questions over text, and I answered them without thinking about it. That was it. That was the extent of my involvement. But saying it out loud made me sound naive at best, complicit at worst. Patricia ended the interview. "Unless you're charging my client, we're done here." "Not yet," Caldwell said. "But soon." Walking out of that building, I felt the weight of inevitability. They were going to charge me. The evidence was circumstantial, but overwhelming. And juries convict on circumstantial evidence all the time. That night, I drafted a letter. To the victims, to my family, to anyone who would listen. Explaining what happened. How I'd been manipulated. How sorry I was for being so stupid. I wrote it long, then short, then long again. Eventually deleted it all. Words wouldn't save me now. My aunt called the next morning. Not my mom, not my siblings, the aunt whose son had done this. I found something, she said. Her voice was hollow, empty. In Dylan's storage unit, something you need to see. I met her there with Patricia. My aunt had a key to the unit, something Dylan had given her years ago for emergencies. She'd been going through his things, looking for any clue about where he might have gone. What she found was worse than that. The storage unit was maybe 10 by 10, crammed with boxes and filing cabinets. My aunt had been organizing it, hoping to find some explanation for her son's behavior. Instead, she'd found documentation of something much darker. The first thing she showed me was a folder labeled Research Materials. Inside were printed articles about mass poisonings, case studies from the Tokyo subway sarin attack, the Tylenol murders, the Jonestown massacre, each one annotated in Dylan's handwriting. Notes about what worked, what failed, what investigators looked for. The second folder was labeled Pharmaceutical Analysis. It contained detailed breakdowns of various drugs, their effects, their detectability in toxicology screenings. Veterinary medications were highlighted throughout. There were dosing charts, calculations for body weight ratios, timelines for onset and duration. The third folder was just labeled Subject. My aunt's hands were shaking as she opened it. Inside were photos of me, dozens of them. Me at work, me at home, me at the grocery store, me at the gym. Surveillance photos taken over months, documenting my daily routine. There were notes attached to each one. Leaves clinic at 6:15 p.m. Works late on Thursdays. Parks in same spot every day. Patricia started photographing everything. This is premeditation, she said. This proves he was planning to frame you specifically. But my aunt was staring at another section of the storage unit, a locked filing cabinet. She had a key for that too. Inside were notebooks, 5 of them filled with Dylan's handwriting, journal entries dated over the past 18 months. And they told a story I wasn't prepared to hear. The first entry was from January of last year. Need to solve the money problem. Father won't help. Bethany's family won't help. Banks won't extend credit. Need another solution. The entries progressed from there, researching insurance fraud schemes, fake death plots, elaborate cons. Each one dismissed for various reasons. Too risky, too obvious, too difficult to execute. Then, in March, a shift. What if the solution isn't taking money? What if it's creating a crisis that requires money to solve? Something that shifts focus away from me entirely. April's entries detailed the evolution of his plan. A mass casualty event would generate enough chaos to disappear in, but it needs a scapegoat. Someone credible enough to be suspected, but not smart enough to defend themselves properly. I felt sick reading that. Not smart enough to defend themselves. May was when he identified me specifically. Cousin works with controlled substances. Trusting, eager to help. Has medical knowledge but no street sense. Perfect candidate. Also convenient that family already sees me as the successful one. Nobody would suspect I'd target someone they like more than me. The entries became more detailed from there. How he'd manufacture evidence. How he'd establish patterns of behavior that seemed suspicious in hindsight. How he'd use Bethany to create distance between me and potential witnesses. June was about logistics, guest lists, medication quantities, timing. And this entry, dated June 18th, borrowed cousin's truck today. Planted empty medication vials in the wheel well. Will remain undetected until FBI searches vehicle. Another piece of evidence established. Patricia stopped photographing. He planted evidence in your truck? Apparently. My aunt was crying silently, still reading through the notebooks. She found the page that broke her. Why? She said quietly. Why would he hate you this much? I found the answer near the end of the last notebook. An entry from late June, right before the party. Mother called today. Told me how proud she is of cousin. How he's doing well at the clinic. Staying grounded, living within his means. She doesn't say it, but I hear it. Wishes I were more like him. Wishes I hadn't gotten into debt. Hadn't made bad choices. Wishes I were someone else. Fine. I'll give her someone else to wish about. When cousin's in prison and I'm gone, she can spend the rest of her life wishing she'd been a better judge of character. My aunt collapsed against the filing cabinet. This is my fault. He did this because of me. No, I said. He did this because he's a sociopath. Patricia was already on the phone with Caldwell. Within 2 hours, FBI agents were at the storage unit collecting evidence. Within 4 hours, the narrative had shifted completely. I wasn't the accomplice. I was another victim. Caldwell apologized when she arrived. We built the case around the evidence we had. This changes everything. You were going to charge me with 18 counts of attempted murder. Yes, she said simply. We were. I'm sorry. The investigation pivoted. Now they were looking for Dylan and Bethany as equal partners in a conspiracy to commit fraud, attempted murder, and framing an innocent person. The storage unit revealed their entire escape plan, fake passports, plane tickets to Argentina, account numbers for offshore banks. They'd transferred $89,000 to those accounts over the past 6 months. Money skimmed from Dylan's business, borrowed from family, taken from joint accounts. Money they'd planned to live on while I rotted in prison. My truck was searched again, this time properly. They found the vials Dylan had planted, empty containers for ketamine and ace-promazine, hidden in the wheel well exactly where his journal said they'd be. My fingerprints weren't on them. His were. The news coverage shifted overnight. From vet tech poison dozens to man frames cousin in elaborate plot. My photo was replaced with Dylan's. The story became about him, not me. About his debts, his failures, his jealousy. The death threats stopped. My landlord apologized. Dr. Henderson called and asked when I could come back to work, but the damage was done. Everyone had seen me paraded as a suspect for 2 weeks. Friends had pulled away, uncertain if I was capable of mass murder. My reputation was shattered. My face associated with poisoning and attempted murder, even if I'd been cleared. My mom kept telling me it would blow over, that people would forget. But I knew better. The internet doesn't forget. My name was permanently linked to this case, innocent or not. I spent a week just existing, not working, not socializing, just trying to process what had happened. Patricia handled the legal aftermath. She filed motions to have my truck returned, to get my work records sealed, to remove my name from public documents where possible. My aunt visited one evening. She looked like she'd aged 10 years in 2 weeks. "I don't know how to apologize for this," she said. "You didn't do anything. I raised him. I must have done something wrong. Dylan made his own choices." She handed me an envelope. Inside was a check for $15,000. "It's not enough. It'll never be enough, but it's what I can spare right now." I tried to give it back. She refused. "He used you. He tried to destroy your life. I can't fix that, but I can at least help with the bills while you put things back together." After she left, I stared at that check for a long time. Blood money, in a way. Payment for her son's cruelty. I deposited it the next day. Pride couldn't cover rent. 2 weeks after the storage unit discovery, they found Bethany. She was at a hotel in San Antonio, traveling under a fake name. When the FBI arrested her, she immediately started talking. Gave them everything. The full plan, Dylan's location, bank account details, her role in the scheme. She was terrified and desperate for a deal. According to Bethany, Dylan had convinced her this was their only way out, that his family would never help with their debts, that they'd lose everything. He'd promised her a fresh start in South America, a new life. All they had to do was execute one event and let me take the blame. She'd gone along with it because she loved him, because she was scared, because Dylan was very good at manipulation, and she'd been in too deep before she realized what she was part of. The FBI offered her immunity in exchange for helping them locate Dylan. She gave them an address in Guatemala City, a villa he'd rented under a false name 3 months earlier. The extradition process would take time, but at least they knew where he was. I thought I'd feel relief when they found him. Instead, I felt nothing. Just this hollow exhaustion that hadn't left since the day Dylan first borrowed my truck. The whole ordeal had lasted exactly 6 weeks from the day of the party to the day they cleared me. 6 weeks of my life consumed by terror and uncertainty. 6 weeks of being treated like a criminal. 6 weeks of watching my entire existence unravel because my cousin decided I was expendable. Patricia helped me file a civil suit against Dylan and his estate. My aunt supported it, devastated by what her son had done. "Take everything," she told me. "He doesn't deserve any of it." The criminal trial would happen eventually. Dylan would be extradited, charged with 18 counts of attempted murder, conspiracy, fraud, witness tampering, and about a dozen other charges. He'd likely spend the rest of his life in prison. Bethany took a plea deal for cooperation and got 12 years. And me? I got my life back, technically. My job, my apartment, my reputation mostly restored. But something fundamental had changed. I couldn't look at the medication cabinet at work without thinking about how easily access becomes suspicion. Couldn't see my family without wondering who else might be capable of that level of calculated betrayal. The victims from the party recovered over the following months, all 18 of them. They filed their own lawsuits against Dylan's estate, which they'll probably win eventually. They deserve to. What they don't deserve is what Dylan put them through, using them as props in his escape scheme, poisoning them just to create a crime scene that pointed at me. One of the victims, a woman named Greta, reached out to me through Patricia. She wanted to meet, to understand what had happened from my perspective. We met at a coffee shop downtown on a Tuesday afternoon. "I thought I was going to die," she told me. "I woke up in the hospital 3 days later with no memory of what happened. They told me someone poisoned me, but not who or why. I'm sorry that happened to you. When they said you were a suspect, I believed it. I wanted someone to be angry at, and your face was everywhere. I know. Now I feel terrible about that." We talked for over an hour, about fear, about violation, about how hard it is to feel safe after something like that. She'd started therapy, stopped going to social gatherings, developed anxiety about food and drinks. Her life had changed just like mine had, just in different ways. Before she left, she said, "I hope they put him away forever, but I also hope you're okay, because he hurt you too." I thought about that conversation for days. How Dylan had created multiple victims, not just the people he poisoned. Me, the other uninvited family members, Bethany in her own way. Everyone touched by his scheme had been damaged somehow. I gave a victim impact statement when Bethany was sentenced 6 months later. The judge let me speak, even though technically I wasn't one of the poisoned guests. "You destroyed my life for 6 weeks, I told her. Made me believe I was going to prison for something I didn't do. Do you know what that feels like? To be completely innocent and watch the entire justice system build a case against you?" Bethany cried. Said she was sorry. Said Dylan had manipulated her too. Maybe that was true. Maybe she was also a victim in her own way. But she'd still made choices, still sent those texts, still helped plan the logistics, still let me twist in the wind while they executed their escape. The judge gave her 12 years. She'll be eligible for parole in 8 if she maintains good behavior. Part of me thinks that's not enough. Part of me doesn't care anymore. My aunt stopped speaking to Dylan completely after his arrest. She visits Bethany sometimes at the federal facility where she's being held, trying to understand what happened. I don't have the heart to tell her she'll never get a satisfying answer. Some people are just capable of terrible things when they're desperate enough, or jealous enough. Or both. I went back to work at the clinic 4 months after everything came out. Dr. Henderson created a new protocol for controlled substance access, more checks and documentation. I didn't tell him it was pointless. If someone wants to frame you badly enough, they'll find a way. No system is perfect, but I appreciate the gesture. The first few weeks back were awkward. Co-workers didn't know what to say. Clients who'd seen the news coverage looked at me differently. One woman requested a different technician for her dog's appointment, said she wasn't comfortable with me handling medications. Dr. Henderson politely told her to find another clinic. But here's what nobody tells you about being falsely accused. Even after you're cleared, even after the truth comes out, you're never really cleared in everyone's eyes. There are still people who think I got away with something, who see my name and remember the headlines, who treat me differently because I was once suspected of poisoning 18 people, regardless of what the evidence ultimately proved. The internet doesn't forget. Google my name and the first page of results are still articles about the investigation. Person of interest, under scrutiny. Providing information to authorities. The follow-up articles clearing me are buried on page 2. Most people never get that far. I've thought seriously about changing my name. Starting completely over somewhere new, somewhere nobody knows about 4th of July 2023. But that feels like letting Dylan win. Letting him take not just 6 weeks of my life, but my entire identity. So I stayed, kept my name, kept my job, kept living in the same apartment where FBI agents had searched through my possessions, looking for evidence of crimes I didn't commit. It's uncomfortable, it's humiliating, but it's mine. Dylan was finally extradited 8 months after the party. The Guatemalan government had initially been uncooperative, but pressure from the State Department eventually forced their hand. He was returned to the U.S. in shackles, looking nothing like the confident cousin I remembered. He'd lost weight, his hair had gone gray, and his eyes had this empty quality that almost made me feel sorry for him. Almost. The trial is scheduled for late January. I'll have to testify, walk through those 6 weeks again in front of a jury and cameras. Explain how my cousin systematically framed me for mass poisoning while I was naive enough to think he was writing a thriller novel. My lawyer says the case against him is solid. The journal, the surveillance photos, the planted evidence, Bethany's testimony. The prosecution has everything they need. Dylan will be convicted, no question. His own lawyer has advised him to take a plea deal, but apparently he's refusing. Wants his day in court, wants to tell his side of the story. I'm not sure I want to hear it. Not sure I want to sit in a courtroom while he tries to justify what he did to me, to those 18 people, to his own mother. But Patricia says my testimony will be crucial, that juries need to see the human cost of his actions. But I'm not sure I care about the conviction anymore. What I care about is rebuilding what Dylan tried to destroy. My reputation, my sense of safety, my ability to trust people. Those things don't come back with a guilty verdict. I've been seeing a therapist twice a week. Court mandated initially to evaluate my mental state for trial purposes, but I kept going after that requirement was met. We talk about trust, about trauma, about how to move forward when someone you loved tried to sacrifice you for their own gain. It helps, sometimes. My sister asked me recently if I thought Dylan ever actually cared about me, if our entire relationship had been fake, or if something changed along the way that turned love into willingness to destroy. I don't have an answer. The journal entries suggest the jealousy was always there, simmering beneath the surface, but we'd grown up together, had good memories, shared family traditions. Were those all meaningless to him? Or did desperation just override everything else? I'll probably never know. And maybe that's the hardest part. Not the false accusation, not the investigation, but the uncertainty about whether any of it was real. What I do know is this. Getting uninvited to my cousin's lake house party kept me out of an investigation that's still ongoing. But it also showed me something darker about human nature. About how easily someone you trust can turn you into a weapon. About how fast your life can become evidence against you. About how fragile reputation really is when someone decides to destroy it. And about how justice, even when it comes, never quite makes you whole again. The trial starts in 6 weeks. I've already bought a new suit for testimony. Patricia says I should look professional, sympathetic, like a victim rather than a conspirator. I hate that I have to think about that. Hate that my appearance in court will be analyzed and judged alongside the facts of the case. But that's where I am now. Still fighting to reclaim my life from my cousin's scheme, still trying to convince the world that I'm exactly what I've always been, just a regular person who trusted the wrong family member and nearly lost everything because of it. The investigation is still ongoing. They're still tracing Dylan's financial dealings, still uncovering new layers of his planning. Every few weeks, Patricia calls with some new revelation. Money Dylan stole from our grandfather's estate. Loans he took out using forged documents. A string of fraudulent businesses that existed only on paper. Turns out the lake house party wasn't his first attempt at crime, just his most ambitious, and I was unlucky enough to be the fall guy he chose for it. I keep Bethany's text message saved on my phone, the one that uninvited me to the party. I read it sometimes, still trying to decode whether there was any kindness in it, any small part of her that didn't want me to end up as a victim. But I think the truth is simpler. It was tactical, part of the plan. I was never meant to be at that party because I needed to be elsewhere, building an alibi while remaining accessible enough to be implicated. Everything about that night was calculated, and I was too trusting to see it coming. So now I live with that knowledge, that my cousin looked at me and saw not family, but an opportunity, a tool to be used and discarded, someone whose life was expendable in service of his escape plan. And somehow I have to find a way to move forward anyway.